Uncover the wisdom of the feminine through soulful conversations on spirituality, healing, relationships, self-leadership, sovereignty, and so much more. I'm your host, Tamar, feminine embodiment facilitator, feminine arts mentor, and soul tantrika. In this podcast, my goal is to take you deeper into the world of the feminine, stepping more into your feminine pleasure, power, authentic truth, and your sovereignty. Welcome to the Feminine Codes podcast. Welcome back to the Feminine Codes podcast, and today I am with Susan Snow. She is an author, a trauma resiliency coach, and speaker. And today we're going to have a conversation on her journey from healing from a trauma, which led her to many spiritual awakenings. So I can't wait to dive into learning more about those. And also she wrote a book about her journey from trauma to resiliency. And I feel like this is such an important topic. Trauma is profound in our society. So many of us have experienced it. I've experienced PTSD myself, and resiliency is a key that is so important to our humanity. So Susan, welcome to the Feminine Codes. I'm so excited to have you on to hear about your journey. And I would love for you to introduce yourself however you'd like, but also to hear about your journey and what brought you to this work, because I know that's a really profound journey.
Thank you for having me, for one. So you pretty much said it all. Becoming a trauma resiliency coach was born out of one of my awakenings. And it just, when I was writing my book, I found my purpose, truly found my purpose. And so that was incredible. Not expected. But and then I'm also married. I've been with the same guy for 40 years, which is weird to say. It's weird to say.
Incredible.
Thank you. He's been with me from the very beginning. So he too has gone through trauma. And I have 3 beautiful adult children, and they have watched their mother change and grow and all the things. Also with PTSD, they watched that as well. But it has allowed me to recognize when they were having some mental health issues, and I knew kind of what to say. I knew where to meet them. And I was very grateful for that, because, that's a scary place for parents to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you take us into what happened a little bit and why you wrote your book? I know that you had a loss of your father. That's kind of what triggered all of this, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you my story. I was 17 years old. I had a 6-year-old brother at the time. This was 1985. My dad was a Los Angeles police detective, robbery homicide. On Halloween Day, he was actually getting ready to testify in a court case that he was the lead detective in. And of course, I had the normal teenage life at the time. And that was a night where there was supposed to be a party, and I wanted to go with my friends, and it was a school night. So he said, nope, not happening. And so the plan was he was going to leave the courthouse, go pick up my brother from school, and then come home, and I would talk to him more about going to this party. Unfortunately, I didn't get that chance, because as I was getting ready, my mom had come home from work, and the phone rang. And I ran to go get it, thinking it was for me. And it wasn't. It was a lady from my brother's school. And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. My mom came into the room and I immediately handed her the phone. I tried to listen in. I couldn't hear anything, but I watched her body language. And that pretty much told me that things were serious. It was bad. So she got off the phone, looked at me, and said, "We're going to the school." We got in the car, drove to the school. It's now nighttime. It's after 5 o'clock, so it's dark outside. And we got to the school, parked the car. There's a parking lot in the middle of the school. It's a church school. And the kids got out on the back side of the school after school program. So that's where we headed. And even though it was nighttime, it looked like it was daytime because there were so many police cars and the lights were on. And there was an ambulance and their lights were on. And as we walked towards the back, we could see my dad's truck. So we started to run towards the truck. We saw glass on the ground as we got closer, and then we rounded the corner, and there he was, partially covered up. I watched my mom fall to her knees and scream, and I stood there not being able to comprehend what I was looking at. And so in my brain, I just kept hyper focusing on the ambulance and thinking to myself, why isn't anyone helping him? I don't understand what's happening. 2 officers came up and grabbed us by our arms and escorted us back into the school. And we went into an office. My mom got taken aside by some detectives. And at that point, I had no idea where my brother was. I didn't know if he was hurt. I didn't know what happened to him. I sat down on a chair and I was just trying to process everything that was going on. It was very chaotic, if you can imagine. And as I sat there, I could listen to 2 of the ladies that worked there, and they were talking. And the one lady said that my dad was deceased. And that's when my world cracked. And I wanted to run out of that room as fast and far as I could go. But my entire body felt like it was filled with cement. I couldn't move. My mom came up to me a little bit later and she said, "I'm sending you with a neighbor." And I know part of me wanted to run, but the kid part of me needed to be with my family unit. I needed to know where my brother was. I needed to be with him. I needed to be with my mom. And unfortunately, I didn't get that chance. So I did go with the neighbor, and she lived on our block. So when we got closer to the house, I realized that my entire block, which was very, very quiet normally, was filled with law enforcement. And there were helicopters overhead. It was very chaotic. And my poor neighbor, who's known me since I was little because I was friends with her daughter, was trying to process as an adult everything that she was seeing and hearing and navigating her own emotions around it. And then she has his teenage daughter that is completely inconsolable in her living room. And I had been dating this guy, my husband, for 3 months. He was 19 years old at the time, and I was 17. All I wanted was him. I asked her to call him at work, and she did, but she didn't give him enough information. So when he showed up, he was like any other normal person who would be like, "Okay, grab your purse. Let's go to the hospital. What hospital is he at? Where's your mom? Where's your brother?" All the normal questions. And I just couldn't blurt out the words. I couldn't say it. And the more persistent he got about leaving, I finally blurted it out. "He's gone." And he said, "What do you mean he's gone?" And I said, "He's gone. He's not at a hospital." And I watched him drop to his knees and start to sob. And both of us were really just two kids trying to like process everything, not knowing how to navigate this, um, and seeing all the chaos around us, not knowing how to navigate that either. And back then, there was no talk about mental health in the mid 80s. There were no resources for kids. And there was very little known about PTSD at the time. In fact, back then, it was called shell shock because it was attributed to war and military coming back from war. So I knew very little about mental health. Um, and when I did finally go back that night, my house was filled with strangers. I had no idea who they were. And when I walked in the house, um, I heard my mom in the background, but she was busy, and that was okay because I just wanted to do what a kid does and run to my room and hide. I just wanted to hide. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to answer any questions. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to hide. And so that's what I did. And I hid in there. I stayed in there, even when my boyfriend left. And I could still hear people in my living room. I didn't sleep that night. I could hear my brother crying through the night. So I knew he was physically okay. And I just had nothing left. Like I couldn't even pull my head off of a pillow. And I was already starting to have the anxiety had already started to come into play with me, and I didn't know what that was. Like I literally felt like my skin was crawling, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had no tools. Um, when I finally looked out the window, it was light outside, so I knew I had not slept all night, and went out. I was able to see my brother around 11 o'clock in the morning to give him a hug and to tell him that we were gonna be okay and that we would get through this. And the reason we had police presence for a very long time because unbeknownst to us, we too were a target in
Mm-hmm.
this was a planned out assassination of my dad in retaliation for his testimony. And because of that, they had watched us for months and months and months. And we didn't know this until the trial. But part of the reason behind the book, too, is because there were many times where I felt like I wasn't a part of this scenario. So being sent to a neighbor's house, um, it took the media 2 days to figure out he had a teenage daughter. And media presence was all over my neighborhood because it was a big story. Um, and so I just felt kind of pushed aside, like I wasn't important. And I had this police presence for 6 days because they didn't catch the guys for 6 days. So we had police presence in our front yard and our backyard. I had bodyguards that went with me wherever I went or wherever my mom went. And so I had gone from this like normal teenage world to this. And there was so many forms of trauma around that. Um, Not to mention not being able to grieve in private and trying to navigate a relationship with my mother because my mother and I's relationship was not, it was a little rocky. And my dad was always the voice of reason. He was always the go between. He was my security. I felt safe with him. My dad was a very present person. So he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And now he's gone. And I didn't know, not only did I not know how to navigate all the things that were going on with me with depression. I had suicidal ideation. I didn't know it. I just wanted to be with my dad, and I didn't care how that happened. Um, and the anxiety, the panic attacks, all of those things. I just felt like I was out of control. Like I was going crazy. And I just kind of lived in a fog for a while. And definitely within a month after he was killed, I had nothing. And I felt like nothing. And if you pushed me in a direction, that was the direction I would go. So I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to verbalize what was going on with me internally. And I was terrified. I felt like if I told somebody what was going on with me, they would throw me in a loony bin and call it a day,
You're a
because
teenager.
they would, yeah. I mean, I was a kid and I didn't, I knew that if you went to a therapist, you must be crazy because that was my kid brain. And so, when my mom came to me and said, LAPD wants to pay for therapy for you and me and my brother, um, I was like, well, I don't know anything about therapy. All I know is that if you go to therapy, you're nuts. But my mom voluntold me I was going to therapy, so I went. And I had a little bit of hope. I thought, okay, well, this is a professional, so maybe this professional can help me feel better. And I went and I met with him, and he was not trauma informed, nor was he trauma competent. He did not want to dip his feet in the weeds with me. He did not. And because of that, he never asked me the questions that would allow me to be vulnerable enough to tell him what was going on. So our sessions were very shallow. It was just
Mhm.
very general about my relationship with my mom, my brother, my boyfriend, and school.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I struggled every week thinking, okay, this is the week he's going to say something or do something to make me feel better. And it didn't happen. For an entire year, I saw him.
You were with him for a
And
year and you had nothing.
nothing. I got nothing out of it, like literally nothing, other than realizing that he was the first person to tell me that my mom was abusive. And I didn't know that prior. I just thought, all kids get hit with anything they can get their hot little hands on. um, so that was a revelation to me. However, he never addressed what was really going on.
Right.
And at the end of the year, he looked at me and said, Susan, you're a well rounded young lady. You're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore. And I walked out of that office thinking, okay, I've snapped. I'm crazy. I'm a professional can't help me. So I'm going to have to figure this out on my own.
How did you start to heal your PTSD? Where did you learn the tools then to
Oh,
do
that
that?
was
If
years later.
really.
I lived in fight or flight and freeze for
Mhm.
14 years of my life. 14 years of not being able to really advocate for myself, not
Mhm.
and hiding. So I created what you call an emotional mask, and that mask was based on what people told me. So when people said, "Oh, Susan, you're so strong. Oh, Susan, you're so brave." That was what I hid behind. Okay, I'm strong. I'm brave. But inside, I was a mess. I had so many things that came up, triggers that, and I hate that word, but things that would come up and bring all of that stuff back over and over and over and over again for years. I never allowed people to really support me in the way that I really needed to be supported. I always pushed people away and said, nope, this is my burden, it's not yours. And I didn't see people for who they really were. I didn't recognize when relationships, friendships were not healthy ones. Um, I know there's a saying like trying to see the good in everyone, but there are times where sometimes you can't, but I would force myself. You know what I mean? And I
I've
would
also been that
mold,
person.
yeah, and you just like mold yourself into what that person needs you to be and you stay there. And so they can stomp all over you and you're going to take it. And I lived like that for 14 years and married the boyfriend. And we had 2 kids when we decided to leave Southern California and move to Colorado. And I felt at the time that if I left everything behind geographically, that it wouldn't follow me. No one would know me in Colorado. No one would know my story in Colorado. Like I played up this thing in my head that I could actually leave that part of my life behind. And I was kind of excited about this prospect. However, I came to Colorado. I was a hairdresser at the time, and I worked at a salon that was very close to Littleton, Colorado. I was working on April 20th of 1999. I did a client's hair. I took a break and went out into the back room, turned on the TV, and up popped the live coverage of the Columbine shootings. And as I watched the TV, I started having flashbacks of the night my dad was killed. And I started to sweat. I started to have a panic attack. I had no idea why. Why was this happening to me? And my colleagues didn't know my story. So they're looking at me like, what is happening? And I can't answer it. And I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life. So I didn't even understand what was happening. But I did what I always did. I put that mask back on. And I put it on and I went out and I finished my day like nothing happened. Everybody around me was a mess, crying, mad, me, you name it. And I was stoic. And I kept telling myself, this has nothing to do with me. I'm going to be fine. Tomorrow's a different day. I'll be fine. And then I walked out the door to my car, and everything that I had dealt with before and had been just exacerbated, and it all piled back on me. And this time it was worse. And I stopped sleeping and I felt like I was spiraling, but I didn't have the tools and I didn't know what to do. I had severe suicidal ideation. In my head, I would have intrusive thoughts and I would say to myself, I want this to stop. I don't want to feel like this anymore. But on the other end of it, I had 2 babies at home that needed their mom. And so this was a fight for me for a couple of days, except for my husband, who was a smart man, and he saw it. And this is where I firmly believe that there was an intervention here because he came to me and he said, you have 2 choices. You either go get help today or I'm putting you in a hospital. And at that point, I was so scared. I thought, okay, I'm putting up the white flag. I'm surrendering. And I think that surrender is what started this process where I finally surrendered and said, okay, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I can't. And so I made an appointment with a regular physician and he put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a business card and he said, I want you to make an appointment with this trauma therapist. And I looked at him and I laughed at him because I said, wait a minute, I tried this 14 years ago. Therapy didn't work for me. And he said, well, you don't have a choice. So I said, okay. And I made an appointment. Not only did she specialize in severe trauma, she had a specialty of PTSD as well. So as I sat there for the first 3 minutes and she was asking me these questions about my experience when I was 17 and what was happening and how I felt that night. And that gave me a safe space. I felt that safe space with her, and it allowed me to be vulnerable. It allowed me to tell her what I dealt with at 17 and really be descriptive and authentic, and also what I was currently dealing with. And she sat and listened to me intently, and she looked at me and she said, Susan, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal because you have PTSD. And I was kind of taken aback because I was like, wait a minute, I didn't go to war and I'm not in the military. And she said, nope, anyone who has gone through any type of trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to understand is PTSD isn't something that just goes away.
Hmm.
It's something you learn to manage. And it was like, what? You mean I'm not crazy? I'm not nuts? I can heal from this? I had so much gratitude and hope at the same time. I just was like, oh my gosh, I finally know what's going on with me. Like, this is crazy. But I was so grateful. I was so grateful in that moment. And I found my person that understood where she needed to take me, where she needed to guide me, where she needed to help me navigate this. And I was just, it was such an aha moment. It was such a huge moment for me. And it was a turning point. And I feel like I finally woke up. I finally realized, oh my God, I'm going to heal. I'm terrified now because when you do the work,
Yeah.
it's not easy. I don't candy coat it. It's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do for yourself, but it is so important
And so worth it.
and so worth it. So worth it. And it's allows you to take your power back.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to say, I am no longer going to allow this thing that happened to me or this person that hurt me to hurt me any longer. They're not going to have a hold on my life any longer.
Yeah.
And that was a huge experience for me,
Hmm.
for sure.
By working with her, is this what led you to your purpose
Yes,
of,
100%.
yeah.
Because I think the journey with her and the other therapists afterwards, I feel like it was sending me lessons that I could teach down the road from my own experiences. And that's kind of where my book came out because at 50, I don't know what it is about 50, but a lot of people, that's like a line in the sand. Um, and so at 50, I think this was the other awakening for me where it was like, this is it. You've got to move forward. You've got to do this book. And initially, I did the book because for so many years, people had my story written in their own heads.
Mm-hmm.
And they had created this character of me in their head that was nothing like me. And I finally wanted to say, here's me, all of me, authentically. And also, I realized that there was so much pain and anger, especially in the law enforcement world, around my dad's death. And I felt like if they saw my healing, if they saw the resiliency, that it would give them something to say that they can heal as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they could see it. And so it gave them permission to heal a little bit from it. And I thought that was super important. But as I thought about it more in the process, I realized that there were people out there outside of law enforcement that are walking around in this world that are hurting and that have gone through trauma, or maybe they don't know they've gone through trauma,
Mm-hmm.
who needed to hear my message, who needed to know that there was hope. I wanted to give them what I got many years ago with having hope, that I can heal, that I can rise from this. And so that's where my book was born, because I knew that my message was important and it needed to be put out there. And I feel like it was bigger than me. It wasn't just I'm I always say, like, I'm the messenger, and it's bigger than me. And so I feel like, my guides, my dad, my everybody is kicking me in the butt to get this book done. And what was really interesting is, in the process, I was sent people who were connected to law enforcement, even though, like, my editor, my designer, my everybody that was involved in this book had someone, or they were married to law enforcement,
Wow.
and spiritual people as well. And so, my editor she's a psychic intuitive, like she and I was really grateful for that, because I knew that the higher selves were helping me. I didn't know the first thing about writing a book, to be honest. Like, I didn't even know where to start. But I knew that this message was important, and I knew that my story was important for people to hear, to give them hope, so that they can see, if I'm able to come out of this, whatever they've gone through, it's possible for them too as well. And there's power in that, and that they are not powerless from what happened to them. They have the power they can take that power back. So that's that was important to me in writing it.
And I'm sure everyone is cheering you on the other side, your father,
Yeah,
for
I
moving.
believe that.
I do too, and not just from moving through this, it's a huge part of it, but also using your voice as a way to help others also overcome PTSD and trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just feel like when you get to that point too, um, you you're not done. Like, I'm not done, and I've had, like I said, I've had multiple spiritual awakenings. And now it's different. For me, I feel like my intuitive gifts are increased. I'm able to see things that I never got to see before. Like, I see people for who they really are. I see that, I have and everybody says this, but hurt people hurt people. And so it's really important for me to help people heal. so that they're not hurting themselves and they're not hurting the people around them. And, because I see that in my own mother, my mom is a covert narcissist and she has never taken responsibility for any of her choices. Um, and she's lived in victimhood her whole life. So I didn't want to be that, and I think that's really important to have that survivor mentality and not victim mentality, because victim mentality holds you back. It's the thing that tells you, nope, I'm not doing therapy. Mm-mm. It's not going to work for me because my mother's brother, sister told me they did it and it didn't work for them, And I always tell people, if you think therapy didn't work for you, it's because you didn't find your person.
Yeah.
And when I say your person, I mean, and this was a key when I talk to even my clients, that it's important because your healing is your healing, it's not theirs. So interview your therapist. Make sure that they understand your type of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a one size fits all. Different traumas have different modalities and different tools and different journeys. And it can't be generalized like that, So you got to find someone who actually, one, you have that safe space with,
Yeah.
that you can be vulnerable with. Because if you're not vulnerable, the healing doesn't happen. And that's the key. And
Now,
that's
as
the
a
scary part.
it is the scary part, and so as a trauma resiliency coach, like, who is your clientele base? Like, who do you work with the most?
Yeah. Well, the reason I chose this was what I really got clear on, was when you have gone through therapy and I'm in and out of therapy still, but you get to a point where you feel like a different person, and you are, right? You're a more evolved, different person. But you're like, okay, now what? How do I take this person that I am now moving forward? Because therapists deal with your past, your trauma, your this, right? But they don't really zone in on things like patterning, what what did that trauma do? What kind of patterns in your life have you had that have kept you from your relationships, your parenting, or a career that you're looking to have, or a business that you want, and you feel like you've been held back from it, right? So that's where I come into play, is I work with people who have gone through some therapy but still feel stuck. Like, I'm this new person. Now what do I do with them?
Mm. Mm.
And then I meet them where they are, and we create a plan or a map to get to where they want to get to, whatever it is that they want to do, whatever goal they want to put out. And so that's where I come into play.
I honestly didn't know that therapists didn't do that. I think that's fascinating that you have found that space, because you're right. There are definitely patterns, and I can look at my own experience with PTSD, and the trauma that I experienced was just completely different. But what I did notice, because I was even older when that happened, was that I didn't know what I wanted
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. It was like all the dreams that I had, everything that I had been working towards, even just where did I want to live? What did I want to do next? I didn't know any of that. So it took
Yeah.
me a long time to kind of get back to myself, get back to that place where I could dream again and look forward to things and find what those passions and those dreams were for myself. It took
Mm-hmm.
time. So is that a part of what you do?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I look at things that therapists don't really look at,
mm,
right? So There's patterning, there's
Mm.
programming from societal programming, from parental programming, um, that they don't really dive into too much. And I've talked to a lot of therapists, and they're like, you're right, we don't, because we're trying to heal what happened and the emotions that stemmed from that. And, they teach you about, your nervous system regulation and things like that, right? But um, they don't really talk about, other things that can affect your mindset
Mhm.
when it comes to moving forward with goals and things like that. Because you feel like you're kind of lost because you're just like, okay, well, I feel better, right?
Mhm.
Because I've healed from the pain of the trauma, but there's still this thing. And so a lot of us deal with, imposter syndrome, and God knows I have. um, when I wrote the book, I mean, I went through like, this is really important, but who's going to read it? You know what I mean? Like, this is a great message, but who's going to hear me, right? And you know, I had to get past that too.
Mhm.
But the only way that I could get past my patterns and my programming was through coaching. So I had gone into coaching myself after I was in therapy, and it helped me to kind of gauge, okay, this is the person I am, and I'm involved. What is the person I want to evolve into in order to do these things, right? So that's kind of where you get stuck. Like, who do I have to be in order to get to these things that I want to do? And how do I manifest that to happen, right?
Mhm.
So that's where I come into play. And I kind of, coaching has always been some sort of coaching, some kind of guiding has always shown up in my life.
It's
When I
beautiful.
was a hairdresser, they call us the armchair therapist, right? Because we listen to everything.
Totally.
And then I went into real estate, and I started coaching agents, not about selling houses, about their mindset, because selling is 95% mindset, 5% skill. So I would do that. And I realized, through my coach too, she was like, Susan, why aren't you a coach? But I don't
You
know.
already are.
Right. It comes to me authentically, right? And I meet people authentically who need coaching.
Mm.
And, so I decided that was it. I remembered that space where I was like, okay, I'm this person. Now what do I do with her? Like, where do I want to go? And it opened me up. It
Mhm.
opened me up to the universe saying, okay, you're asking, we're going to tell you. And, and then the book became reality. It took me 4.5 years to write it, because I had to dive, and I had to relive, and I had to remember, and I had repressed memories and all the things that happened in that 4.5 years. It also evolved me. It got me closer to where I want to be, which is sitting in front of you right now, speaking to people, as many people as I can get out this message to, because I feel like I said, I'm just the messenger. I was given this message, I was given this healing and this journey, and it's my responsibility to put it out there and help others who need to hear it.
Yes, it's definitely what we call a sacred wound. It's something that when we
Mm-hmm.
heal, it's a gift for us to teach, and it's something that's really important for our journey and life and our purpose. What I do now is my purpose. But and I
Mm-hmm.
did this before I experienced the trauma and the PTSD and during it. And so I stopped what I was doing. I stopped doing this work because of the trauma, because I worked
Mm-hmm.
with women. And for me, it was like I need to now go back and heal myself before I can continue this work because I'm working so deeply and on such a deep level with women. I don't feel like I can have integrity and do this work while I'm also trying to heal. So I stopped for 2 years.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I went back on doing design work, which is my degree. And all of a sudden, all of that fell through, lost everything. And it was like universe's swift kick in the butt, like get back to what you're meant to do. And so it was kind of like, it was not even in my control. It was just like, you've got to go back,
Yeah.
like stop hiding, stop putting this off.
Yeah. And it's funny how the universe works because when I look back at it, I feel like every career I have had has been a stepping stone to where I am now, right? Because, and it has, like, even getting into real estate, I didn't even think, I never in a million years thought I was going to get into real estate ever. And it happened. I got an opportunity and it moved me into a different direction. But then I got into real estate and started moving me into a different direction. And it was being introduced to coaching. And when my coach finally looked at me and said, Susan, you need to be a life coach. Why aren't you life coaching? Why aren't you coaching? And I said, well, I thought real estate was my thing. And I enjoy it. I enjoyed coaching my clients. I love that part of it, but I was coaching agents for free, and just giving them coaching. And it was just more of the universe. Like, yeah, I mean, you can push it away, push it away, push it away. And it'll keep coming back and slapping you in the face and saying, this is not your purpose. And this is not where you're supposed to go. And so here I am, and still growing, still evolving, but I every day that I'm able to speak to somebody and be able to make a difference, I feel so much gratitude for it. And I say that, I found my purpose in my dad's death, and my dad found his purpose in his death as well. Some people think, oh my God, how can you say that? It's not literal. It's just you're given things in life and you choose whether to rise out of it or not.
Yeah.
And I chose to rise out of it, not only rise out of it, but learn the lessons from it. And then in learning the lessons, being able to teach others. And so that's what I wanted this book to be. The book is in two parts. So the first part of the book is about the trauma. And the second part of the book is how I got through it and found the resiliency side of it. And so, that's how I wanted it to be. It's very short. It's 188 pages, and I wanted it short. I wanted people to be, short, sweet, and to the point. But there are so many aspects of my book that I feel like people can connect to. And there was fear going into writing the book as well. The fear, three major things that I was fearful for was, my relationship with my mom was rocky at best. And I thought because in telling my truth, I had to tell hers. Um, and I held back a lot. um, but I did have to tell her truth as well. And I thought it would either end what we had or open a conversation. And I had to be okay with either outcome. The other fear I had was with my husband. Was this going to open some wounds? Because in 40 years, we have gone through a lot together and continue to. Marriage is work.
Right.
Um, and he too went through PTSD. He too has wounds that he has to heal. right? So there was that, is that going to open up some old wounds for him? And the third was my safety, because two men were still incarcerated for my dad's death. And when you've already been a target, there's always that thing in the back of your head that says, well, there'll be retaliation for going back out there, for telling the story, for, any of that. And I had to sit back and say, okay, these are fears. It's okay to feel them. However, what is your true purpose behind writing this book? And I would think of all those faithless people out there that needed to hear my story, that needed to hear hope and healing and being able to rise from whatever it is and take your power back. And every time I thought of those people, it allowed me to bulldoze through that fear and keep going. And that was really important for me. You know, they tell you if you fear something, do it anyway. And it's true, because I was able to finish the book. And that was I was so grateful in that moment that I was able to finish it. And seeing it in print, it was incredible
Mm-hmm.
and scary at the same time, because it's like, here I am, all of me.
That's really stepping into your power, really claiming your power back. And,
Yeah.
it's in my line of work, it's gathering all those pieces, those soul fragments is how I see trauma, is like fragmented pieces of our soul that we call back in and just integrate back into our body.
Yeah. Well, and, women, as women, we tend to not step into our power. We tend to allow it to create us, to make us small,
Yeah.
and, and hide from ourselves and hide from the hurt and the pain and all of that. And that was the other thing. I wanted to put it out there for women to see, you can you can heal. You can take your power back. You can be the powerful person that you want to be. And I thought that was really important as well.
Talking about your book, where can they find your book?
My book is on Amazon.
Okay.
It's called The Other Side of the Gun: My Journey from Trauma to Resiliency. It is in paperback form, it's on Kindle. And I went into a studio and narrated my own book, so it is on audio. That just came out. So yeah, that's the best way to get it right now.
And then your voice, so powerful.
Thank
Using
you.
the voice to share your story and your gift is
Yeah, that
really.
was a whole different journey in itself. But I was grateful for being able to do it. And at first, I was going to hire someone. I was going to hire someone, an actress who knew what the heck they were doing. And everyone who read the book was like, "Oh no, you don't. Like,
Mhm.
this is your life. This is your story. It needs to be from your voice."
I agree.
And okay.
Out of your comfort zone.
There goes
Back
the
into your.
universe again. Darn it.
Exactly.
Can't get away from it. Yeah. Yeah. Source was like, no, you're going to do this yourself. So yeah, I do that. I created a website too. It's susansnowspeaks.com, and it is open, and it is a one-stop shop, I call it. It has information about my speaking and my coaching, and also a little bit about my book as well. So people can reach out to me. I offer a free 40-minute discovery call to see if coaching is the way to go for you. And even if it isn't, we have a 40-minute chat, and maybe you can get some nuggets out of our conversation, then it's worth it.
I'll put for all the links in the show notes. Everyone has a direct link to your site and to your book, so we can get that out there and be a voice for those people who really need guidance around
Yeah.
healing. Do you have a practice that you do on a daily basis that kind of helps you come back to center, or on more of a regular basis that helps you like stay focused on what you're doing and really be present and in your body? Do you have a practice that you do, that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think gratitude is a game changer in your life. So I think of three things that I'm grateful for every single day and why I'm grateful for them, or it, or whatever. It could be anything. Like, I'm grateful for the air I breathe today. I'm grateful for waking up. I'm grateful for the blue sky, the beautiful blue sky that's outside. It doesn't really matter what it is, but what it does is when you do it in the morning, first thing, it just starts your mindset on a positive note. And gratitude literally can change your nervous system as well. So that's one thing. And I learned journaling through um, my therapist, my person. Um, and it's powerful. It's a powerful tool to use, and anyone can use it. So, and gratitude, like I said, is a game changer. It really can change your mindset for the entire day.
It can. And if you're someone who has dealt with trauma or PTSD or anything of that sort, having that practice is, it, like you said, it's really a game changer. Just
Mm-hmm.
finding even one thing that you're grateful for. Some of my
Yeah,
mornings, it was, I am grateful just because of, I get to wake up, or for the cup of coffee that I'm
right.
about to have. It's just, even if it
Yeah.
seems something silly, but just finding that
It doesn't
gratitude. You're
matter.
so right.
It's just finding something to be grateful for.
And it
Yeah,
grows.
and it does grow. Yep.
Mm,
You
thank
start to see things differently as you're walking around in this world, right?
you.
So I think it's an important tool to use every day.
I agree. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story and being a voice for healing for the world, and just shining your light and continuing to do your work and living your purpose.
Thank you for having me, and I hope that this has touched someone out there that needed to hear this.
I am sure it has. Thank you so much, Susan. And until next time.